Hey guys, this is Cub,
And Skell.
and today we're doing a moon tier list for Lethal Company.
But before we get into this, we appreciate everybody who supports our journey of starting this YouTube channel. First up, we have experimentation. The look and feel of this moon is pretty good, especially for a starter moon. It looks kind of like a rundown train station. There's a ruined train track and a building next to ship. The main entrance and fire exit are pretty close, just up a ladder and some stairs for fire. It's really easy to shuttle loot. All you really have to do is jump down and run to the ship. When it comes to monsters, no baboon hawks or forest giants spawn, which is amazing. However, leviathans, eyeless dogs, and old birds can all spawn. There is a high chance for at least one of these monsters to spawn.
Moving on to the interior. The interior of experimentation is pretty small, which is great for finding loot because it's all close together. However, the loot inside isn't very good, and there's not much of it. One bonus of the interior though is that easy monsters spawn, for example, bunker spiders and snare fleas. For the overall rating, experimentation gets a D. Next up, we have assurance.
For the looks, it's kinda boring. It's just a desert with big rocks everywhere. Both the main entrance and fire exit are accessible. However, they are both pretty far away from the ship. Shuttling is also pretty annoying with having to maneuver around rocks and dodge monsters. All outdoor monsters spawn except old birds, which makes it even harder to shuttle.
For the interior, assurance commonly has factory interiors, and can spawn mineshaft interiors, which isn't very good. It has a decently big interior, which makes it a little harder to find loot. However, assurance spawns better loot and a bit more scrap than experimentation spawns, which is nice for getting the quota. For interior monsters, assurance mainly spawns loot bugs, snare fleas, and bunker spiders.
For the overall rating, assurance gets a C. Wow, looks pretty cool. The forest and dam both look good, and it adds to the atmosphere. The main entrance and fire exit are decently close. However, fire is in a terrible spot. It's at the bottom of the dam. Forest giants like to camp there, making it relatively impossible to shuttle at night. Baboon hawks also spawn on this map, and with the newest update, the giant sapsucker spawns relatively frequently on this moon. Along with this new bird-like monster, eggs spawn, which are very valuable. However, they are really hard to bring back to ship without the sapsucker killing you instantly. The last thing for the exterior is that valuable beehives do spawn.
For the interior, it is mainly factory, but it has a chance to spawn as a mineshaft. It is also relatively large, which makes it a little bit harder to find items. However, on Vow, it spawns a good amount of loot, with the loot being pretty decent. Moving on to monsters, Vow mainly spawns loot bugs, bunker spiders, snare fleas, and brackens, which is annoying because you will always have to check your surroundings. For the overall rating, Vow gets a D. Next, we have offense.
Offense looks like assurance, but better. It looks more built up and worn down. There's pipes that line over to the fire exit. Speaking of fire exit, it's inaccessible unless you do a jump as the ship is landing, or you buy an extension ladder. The main entrance is decently close, as well. Shuttling from main is quick, but shuttling from fire is safer and quicker. Baboon hawks, eyeless dogs, and leviathans all spawn on this moon. Forest giants can also spawn, but they have a low chance of spawning.
Offense has a decent interior size. However, it mostly spawns mineshafts, which is dangerous and makes it harder to find loot. The loot here is pretty good, and there is often a good amount of it. It has some pretty common monster spawns. Offense interior monsters are mostly bunker spiders, snare fleas, slime, thumpers, and loot bugs every so often.
For the overall rating, we've given offense a B. For our next moon, we have March. March looks pretty boring. The pond in the center is cool. Also, when the moon is flooding, the pond overflows, which is also pretty nice. But other than that, there's not much to talk about. Main entrance is kinda far, but as a counter, there are 3 fire exits. 2 of the fire exits are pretty close to the ship, with one of them being a bit further from the ship. Beehives have a high chance to spawn, sometimes spawning more than once on the same day. Shuttling from the fire exits are quick, however, shuttling at night is dangerous. Baboon hawks, forest giants, and eyeless dogs all roam around the area near ship, so you have to be careful. Leviathan can also spawn, but you don't normally see it.
March has a pretty big interior size for a free moon. Since there's 3 fire exits, it's easier to find loot because it's all pretty spread apart. It only spawns factories, meaning it doesn't spawn mineshafts, which is really nice. It spawns a good amount of loot and it has pretty good loot as always. However, it's harder to find loot because the loot is more spread apart due to the large map. The indoor monsters mostly spawn brackens a lot, however it also spawns bunker spiders, loot bugs, thumpers, and snare fleas. The overall rating of March gets an A. Moving on to Adamance.
After the newest update, Adamance looks really nice. The ravine in the middle is really cool, but a bit annoying. The new flowers and trees are amazing and really add to the environment. Main entrance and fire exit are decently close, but to get there fast, you would have to walk on a breakable bridge. Shuttling is really hard at night with monsters everywhere. However, with a jetpack, everything feels so much easier if you know how to use it. This moon spawns a ton of baboon hawks. Forest giants, eyeless dogs, and oldbergs are also a common sight. Beehives do spawn, but not as much as on March.
Adamance has a decent interior size. However, it can also spawn mineshafts, which is much worse than the factory, which can also spawn. Adamance provides great loot, better than all the other free moons. It also spawns a great amount of loot. However, great loot comes with a price. There are insane monster spawns, including jesters, mimics, butlers, and more. Then you have your more common monster spawns, being bunker spiders, thumpers, loot bugs, and snare fleas. Adamance is a high-risk, high-reward moon.
Adamance gets a B as an overall rating. Now, moving on to Rend, the first moon that you have to pay for. This moon costs $550. There's nothing much to talk about the way that Rend looks. It's hard to see anything in this snowstorm. The only memorable thing on this moon is the cabin that you can hide in case of forest giants or eyeless dogs. The main entrance is kind of close. You can follow the lights to main building or go along the side of a hill to reach the doors faster. Fire exit is pretty far and hard to find if you don't know where you're going. As said before, forest giants and eyeless dogs spawn on this moon, making it really hard to shuttle at night. However, as with Adamance, using a jetpack on this moon is really effective.
Rend has a pretty big interior, which can make it harder to find loot quickly. Rend also mostly spawns mansions, but can spawn the others too, interiors. However, Rend spawns a great amount of loot, and the loot is really good. However, since Rend is the first hard moon, it can get very dangerous indoors. Rend has a high chance of ghost growth spawning, which can be very scary, but also has a high nutcracker spawn, which can be good if you can kill one. Rend also can spawn mimics, jesters, coilheads, brackens, and bunker spiders. Rend gets an A for its overall rating. For our next hard moon, we have Dine. This moon costs $600.
There's not much to see on Dine, just another snowstorm. However, it's also just a big mess. The outdoor layout is confusing and hard to navigate. Main is decently close, however, it is inaccessible when the moon is flooding. The fire exit is on the side of a rock, however, it's hard to get there with all the snow and rocks in the way. Forest giants are a big problem on this moon, as they like to spawn near the main entrance and stay there. Eyeless dogs can also spawn, but they are easier to avoid and spawn in the more open area near ship. It is very hard to shuttle and come back alive with all these monsters that like to roam outside.
Dine has a pretty big interior. It mainly has mansion interiors. We can spawn the other two as well. Dine also spawns a great amount of loot and is pretty good loot. Like Rend, it also has dangerous monsters, but worse. It frequently spawns butlers and barbers, which can be very annoying. It also can spawn your more basic monsters as well.
The rating that Dine has been given is an F. For our final hard moon, we have Titan. This moon costs $700. On Titan, the building looks really cool. It looks like it's on the edge of a cliff. You have to go up a lot of stairs and a ladder at the top. Main entrance and fire exit are really close. Again, just up some stairs on the ladder. Using an extension ladder at the top is really effective for shuttling items. Old birds, eyeless dogs, forest giants are the main monsters that spawn outside. Leviathans can also spawn, but it's rare. Also, baboon hawks don't spawn, which is really nice. However, if an old bird spawns on the ladder, it can be really annoying and dangerous.
Dine has a pretty big interior. It uses all the interiors pretty equally too. Dine spawns a lot of scrap, and it is a very good scrap as well. Dine has a lot of monsters and is very dangerous. Masks spawn frequently and spawns jesters, coilheads, and other dangerous monsters, while also spawning your more or less dangerous monsters. Dine is a high risk, high reward moon, and it can be very profitable if you have a good team. Titan gets an S for its overall rating.
Warning, warning. Secrets will be talked about during this next part. If you don't wish to hear about these secrets, please skip to the end.
For our first secret moon, it is the infamous Embion. This moon costs $150.
The hint for this moon is in the Old Bird Bestiary log. In this log, it describes this place as the moon that the old birds live on. As for the look, it sucks. It looks like a desert, a big layer of flat dirt with some mountains here and there. The main entrance and fire exit are pretty far away from the ship. Shuttling is impossible at night or when the apparatus is grabbed. There are a ton of old birds, and they will all activate at a certain time during the day or when apparatus is pulled. Every other outdoor monster isn't dangerous, as the old birds will kill them.
Embion has a decent interior size and commonly has factory interiors. However, Embion has crap loot for what it is worth. It also doesn't spawn a lot of items as well, which is bad for business. The interior is also extremely dangerous with an absurd amount of traps. Mines, turrets, and spike traps are everywhere. Not to mention, it also spawns a good amount of your pretty basic monsters. Embion is a high risk, no reward moon.
Embion gets an overall rating of an F. For our second secret moon and final moon for the video, we will talk about Artifice. This moon costs $1,500. Artifice looks amazing. The main building looks awesome by itself. However, it's not by itself. There are 4 warehouses outside that really add to the environment. Also, there is a fence that goes around the front with a shed on the side that has a gap so that you can slide through the fence. The warehouses provide shelter for monsters, and the shed and fence add a safer route to ship from the building. Main entrance and fire exit are close. However, it is dangerous to shuttle at night. Every outdoor monster spawns, but as said before, the route by the fence is safer and often more efficient than hiding in the warehouses. Jetpack is also amazing, as it's a straight shot to main and fire. Also, there's this feature where you can use the cruiser to jump across the map from ship to building and back.
Artifice has a big interior, but it makes up for it for spawning an insane amount of loot. The loot is also very good too. You are very likely to get a gold bar or cash register at least once a week. However, the interior is extremely dangerous. Every monster will spawn inside. If you have a great team, Artifice is very profitable. And for our final ranking, Artifice gets an S. That's it, guys. If you disagree with any of our ratings, feel free to write it down in the comments. Any and all feedback is appreciated.
Don't forget to be a great asset and make sure to like and subscribe.